Okay, I think we're gonna get started, everybody. You guys ready for this? Woo! All right. Okay, so welcome everybody in person and virtually to the Art and Science of Caring for the Monterey Bay Dunes. I'm super excited to have everybody gather today. I am Lishka Arata, Communications Manager at Point Blue Conservation Science, and I will be your host today. If you are new to Point Blue, we are a nonprofit organization with a mission to conserve birds, wildlife, and ecosystems through science, partnership, and outreach. We were founded in 1965 in the Point Reyes National Seashore, and since then we've grown in size and scope. And right now we work in California from the Sierra to the sea, and beyond California, from Alaska all the way to Chile, and as far as Antarctica. We've got around 160 scientists on the ground and in partnership, collecting data, analyzing data, working with communities to find solutions to climate change and biodiversity loss. I'm just gonna turn my phone off here. Phone's off, that's a good idea. One of the parts of Point Blue's work is actually working in the Monterey Bay area on coastal dune and beach ecosystems, and in particular, studying the western snowy plover. We've got a couple of our plover biologists joining us on Zoom. I believe Chris and George are with us. Hi, guys, welcome. And we have a plover guardian in the audience tonight. Two plover guardians, awesome. So today's presentation will be focusing on that area of Point Blue's work. Another area of Point Blue's work that is sort of newer and expanding is us leaning into partnerships with artists to increase the impact of our conservation work and to expand engagement in conservation solutions. So I'm very proud to be part of that expansion of Point Blue's work, how we do conservation. And I'm lucky enough to be able to host our science illustration apprentices. This is only the second year of us hosting Science Illustration Apprentices, and it's been a huge success. This year, it is Maria Amorette Klos. So we're going to be hearing from her today about her final project, how the apprenticeship went for her, what she learned, and yeah, what she's taking away from the experience. So yeah, super excited to have her with us. And we hope to continue this apprenticeship into the future to engage people in conservation through art. So let's hear a little bit about Maria. I'm going to bring her up in just a second. So Maria comes to us with a bachelor's degree in science illustration from Arcadia University. So that's pretty amazing that there's a bachelor program in science illustration already. Maria said there's a few of them out there. Hopefully those will grow. She also has a master's certificate from the CSU Monterey Bay Science Illustration Program. I know we have folks from that program in the audience today. And she was the 2023, welcome, have a seat anywhere, yeah. She was the 2023 Bartels Science Illustrator at the Cornell Lab of Ornithology. So she comes to Point Blue with a good amount of experience, but she's still an early career science illustrator. And the goal of this apprenticeship is to add to provide a meaningful experience to an early career science illustrator, while also receiving inspiration on ways that we can do our conservation in more effective ways. So we're super excited to hear from her today about her project, which you get sneak peeks of throughout the room here. Before I bring Maria up, I want to give our amazing venue hosts a chance to tell you a little bit about the museum. So we're so excited and grateful to be here in this beautiful space. Yeah, I'm going to bring Noelle up and have her tell you a little bit about the Pacific Grove Museum of Natural History. Come on up.
Thank you. Yeah, so thank you all so much for being here. It really is an honor to have you all and to be able to host this with Point Blue, and particularly with Maria, whose art we actually do have hanging upstairs as part of our Beyond Illustrating Nature exhibit, a fairly new exhibit that highlights the work of the graduates of CSUMB Science Illustration Program, some of whom are in this room, and you're all amazing. We are a nonprofit museum. Our mission is to inspire discovery, wonder, and stewardship of the natural world. And we do that through a variety of programs similar to this: science talks, kids days, some free, some that are charged that goes entirely to the mission of the museum. And I would be very remiss if I didn't say, because I am not only the marketing person, I'm also the events person. On October 4th, we're having our giant fundraising event of the year called Night Owl. We're going to have live owls. If you're into these kinds of things, tequila tastings. Yeah. Adoptable cats and kittens, lots of really good stuff happening, not in the same spots as the owls, I promise. But we're having a really fantastic night, a lot of very fun things that are happening. And if you'd like to support the museum while having an incredible night, that's a wonderful way to do it. Thank you.
Thanks, Noelle. Thank you so much. We're so excited to collaborate even more with you into the future for more events, and we'll spread the word about the Night Owl event too. So Maria's going to give a presentation in just a minute, and then we'll have a little bit of a Q&A period afterwards. And then after that, we'll have a little bit of time to mingle. There's some snacks and beverages out in the lobby. There's a table where you can grab a sticker and a bookmark created by Maria and learn a little bit more about Point Blue. There's some takeaways over there about our work as well. So without further ado, please welcome Maria Amorette.
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for being here for my presentation today. As Nishka mentioned, I've been working with Point Blue for the past couple of months, and on this project that focuses on dune ecology with an emphasis on snowy plovers. And I got to shadow the snowy plover team that works along Monterey Bay and along the beaches there, protecting the plovers. And which are a federally threatened species of bird, shorebird. That's a snowy plover right there. These are also snowy plovers. They're very little, very round. They're kind of elusive. They kind of stay back in the dunes and they'll come out to forage on the kelp. And yeah, so this project focuses on bringing light to them and hopefully their successful survival into the future. So yeah, I hope you guys come away with a little more knowledge about dune ecology and excitement about our local dunes and species here. Okay. Oh, the Zoom. Okay, so the first few weeks at Point Blue, I spent at the headquarters in Petaluma, and I got to shadow different departments, different teams that work on various projects at Point Blue. So there are different conservation projects going on all over, some really cool ones where I got to spend a day in the marine lab where I did some field sketches, and they're looking at food and excrements from some species of birds, studying kind of the qualities of the water and how that's going to affect species in the future. So that's really cool, collecting data. At the top is a staff soccer game. Everyone at Point Blue is super fun, and they do lots of like out of work activities, and it's a really great community of people, super supportive. So we played soccer. And then down at the bottom is a lunch with the Plover team where I was meeting everyone for the first time. And they're all super awesome as well. I got to shadow, I think, everyone there in the field. And I learned so much from them. Super grateful to everybody for letting me tag along. So after I kind of got to know Point Blue and more about their overall mission, I started to focus more on my project's area, which was plovers and the dunes. So I went out with the team. I shadowed Stephanie, Chris, George, Alice was out there, Esther. And yeah, so I got to see what they're doing. It was kind of towards the end of breeding season, which is from March to September. So they were finishing up checking nests, and we went out and they have this cool little map of where all the nests are and what status they're of hatching. So we went out looking for babies and eggs, and we found some freshly hatched chicks, which you can see at the top right there. That is me holding a chick. at the top left. So cute, best day ever. That's Esther banding a chick at the bottom right. So when the chicks hatch, they try and get there as quick as they can to put bands on them so they can track them for the future. Got to do a little bit of field sketching out there. And yeah, so I spent time learning about the dunes and ecology and plovers, kind of gathering references, ideas for the project, and just general knowledge of the ecosystem. So for the project, it involved the development of the entire project. So coming up with the idea, figuring out how it aligns with the goal, how to align it with the goal of Point Blue, and then how it can be used to support that goal. So the topic that I focused on, like I mentioned, dune ecology, and I'll go a little bit more in the next slide into the specific site that I focused on, which is the former CMAX property, which was a sand mine along the Marina Dunes, and they are no longer operational, but the area is kind of in flux of who's going to own it and what's going to happen there. And it's full of lots of wonderful species, and it's a sensitive plover habitat too. So yeah, and the goal of Point Blue in all of this, they are using their science and data that they're collecting to influence decision making, to support minimal disturbance usage of the area. And what this means is to hopefully, by supporting minimal disturbance usage, they can help protect the species that are there, so the lowest impact possible. And then the goal of this project in particular is to foster appreciation for the dunes and the plovers here, and hopefully inspire the community to want to protect and preserve this place, and hopefully learn some more about what's going on in their neighborhood. So the CMAX site, you might be wondering what that is. It's a former sand mine, and it's a 400-acre section of the Marina Dunes that was shut down in 2020 due to violations. And the property is going to be sold to a nonprofit organization. Who that organization is yet is still not known. It's still kind of decision making is happening. So it's a broad scope of what could happen. It's available for conservation and for recreation. So yeah, so again, Point Blue is advocating for lowest impact use to protect the fragile ecosystem there. So part of this project is to engage people, engage the community, get people excited about plovers, and spark interest in the subject. So I created some stickers and bookmarks, just cute little things to hand out to people that also include a link to more info about plovers. So Lishka and I worked on a web page that is now live. You can go to. There's a QR code on the bookmark, and you can learn some more facts about plovers and some of the other sensitive species that are there. Yeah, and those are over here if you didn't grab them. This is the comic. It's a Sanderling versus Plovers comic. Something I heard a few times while I was out and about shadowing the biologists is, people sometimes are confused, like what bird is what, because a lot of the shorebirds look pretty similar. And so a way that people can tell what a Sanderling is versus a plover is their behavior. It's pretty idyllic to them. And so the plovers are they're not as frantic as the Sanderlings. The Sanderlings kind of like run back and forth really quickly, scurry. And then the plovers are kind of like chill. They hang out in the kelp. They walk around. They're more visual feeders. So they have these big, cute eyes, and they look around for food. So yeah, so those are the Sanderlings. And the plovers just chilling in the kelp with the flies and other invertebrates, because that's what they eat. And then this is just the back of the bookmark, just showing you we put a QR code where people can learn more info. Yeah, so when they take these things home, they can, while they're reading their book, if they need a break, they can scan the QR code and read some more stuff. Um, uh, yeah, so focusing more on the project itself. So the creation of the final artwork followed a sequence of events, including a concept sketch, a tight sketch, and the final art. So I'll lead you through the process. And yeah, so the concept sketch. So usually when like planning a project, I like to kind of map out a few different options with little sketches. They're usually very rough, and open to being changed in various ways. So they're very loose, not like focusing on detail, kind of trying to organize the information, what is going to be included, to the best that I can. So that's the concept sketch phase. And this project focused on, so we have the dune ecology. So I'm going to use this little pointer if I can. Yeah. So up here are the dunes, and then we're highlighting a few of the threatened and rare species that are found in the dunes that would be at risk. So we have the Smith's blue butterfly. We have down here the legless lizard. Menzies wallflower got added into there, and then coast buckwheat as well. And then since the emphasis was on plovers, we have some highlighted pop-outs of a plover, a nest, some data from Point Blue that was incorporated. Yeah. And then moving on, did more of a tight sketch. This included kind of like, refining some of the concepts and based on, so after I did the concept sketch, I presented it to the plover team and some more people at Point Blue. And together we all talked and decided, what should be included, what can be taken out, what could be added in, kind of refined the concept sketch to a more concise idea. So that's what happened here. Also did a quick little color sample of the dunes in the background, and also worked with the team to develop the text that would be included. And then finally, the final art. So after going through the concept sketch and the tight sketch, gathering feedback and input and learning more about the dunes along the way and the needs for understanding of these things, then I have the final product. And so that kind of involves, painting everything and rendering it fully, doing the layout and everything like that. Yeah, and there's some printouts of that here. This is the English one, and then we also have a Spanish translated version over here, which you're welcome to look at. Yeah, so something cool that I did to inform this illustration was a beach survey. This is the first time that I did something like this. It was new to me, was a really great experience, and it really helped to inform the illustration of what content to include, what content could be taken out based on hearing firsthand from the public, what they already knew or didn't know about the dunes or the plovers. So this is a list of the questions that I asked. One of them was, do you know what a snowy plover is? And interestingly, a lot of people did not know, or they had like a very vague sense of what it was. So yeah, so they're a shorebird. We highlighted them here. They're labeled. And they're a small shorebird. They're visual foragers. Their breeding habitat is along the Pacific coastline in the US, and their breeding season is March to September, which is when you'll see the roped off areas to protect the nests. So that's something we wanted to make sure was highlighted and focused on in the illustration. Also asking people how they feel about fencing and practicing low impact recreation. So a lot of people did not really understand what low impact recreation was or how they could go about doing that. So we made sure to include, or I made sure to include a person walking with a little blurb about where to safely walk on the beach. So it just says recreating between the rack and waterline minimizes human disturbance to snowy plovers. So showing where is safe to be for least disturbance to the birds. And then a lot of people were interested in conservation, and a lot of people expressed that they wanted to learn more, which was really exciting and awesome. So I think it's great that we were able to create a web page, a landing page, and put that QR code and website on the stickers and bookmarks, so people can learn more. And then creating the artwork. So a little behind the scenes about the process of creating it. It was a mix of digital and traditional. So the elements themselves, except for the data graphic, they were all hand painted, and then I scanned them into the computer, cleaned them up in Photoshop, and formatted them in InDesign to create the layouts and do the labeling, and organize all of it. And then, yeah, focusing also, I didn't mention the data section of the illustration, which I'll go back a couple of slides. I don't know if I can zoom in. I can. They did. Yeah. Yeah. Little Easter egg. Yeah, so this is some graphic. This part I did digitally, and this is based off of data that was gathered by the Point Blue scientists that are doing this plover work. And it shows, why plovers need to nest in this specific area. If they're too far back in the dunes, they're at risk for, I guess I'll use the pointer. Aha. Yeah, so if the nests are too far back in the dunes, they're at risk for predation. So birds like ravens or falcons or hawks, they can prey on the babies and the eggs. So not good to be back there. But because this risk of predation is back in the dunes, it kind of causes the birds to be pressured to push the nests forward. But then when they're too forward in the dune area and the beach, they're at risk for the tide coming in. And then the nest will fail because of the tide. So sweet spot is really kind of like incipient dunes, fore dunes area. And yeah, that correlates to up here we have the dunes labeled. And they are lettered to correlate with those letters. So you can probably see it better up close in the real version, but fore dunes, incipient dunes area, best place to nest. And that's why we don't want to lose the little babies. And then skills I've gained as an early career scientific illustrator. I gained some skills in targeting an audience, as I mentioned, kind of how to incorporate communication skills into a project, like going out and doing the beach survey. Like I said, that wasn't something I had done before, and I found it to be super useful, super helpful in informing the content to be included in the illustration while catering to a specific audience. So since I was catering towards kind of the Monterey and Marina community near where the dunes are, it was also great to be able to have the PG Museum host us locally, so we could hopefully branch out into the community, get the word out there, and spread some plover knowledge and love. And then I also learned about plover dune ecology, which was super cool. I was super excited about that. I'm originally from the East Coast, from Pennsylvania, so I moved here a few years ago, and I love it here so much, and I was just super excited to be able to dive in and learn more about what's going on locally, and learn more about the local species. So that was really a highlight for me. Some cool things I learned. what a healthy dune ecosystem looks like, shadowing the biologists out in the field. I got to go to different areas, different nesting sites, and I got to see a dune that was super, super healthy, full of lots of native species, and then compare it to a dune that was maybe needs a little more restoration work. Less of these native species are there. So that was cool to see. I learned more about the species that are in there, like the coast buckwheat and how important that is to the Smith's blue butterfly. They're very like dependent on that plant in particular, and they really don't leave the dune area. So this section of space is very, very important for them. And then learned a lot about plover behavior. To protect the chicks, they do this broken wing display. So they'll pretend they have a broken wing and they'll kind of like hobble along and try to get the predator to follow them to go away from the nest to protect the babies. I learned threats to the plovers, their feeding behavior, how they're visual feeders, how to distinguish their behavior on the beach, and also how to read leg bands, which is super cool. And one more thing that I learned was kind of how to better organize a lot of input. So there were a lot of people involved in kind of the phases of the project, presenting ideas and lots of really awesome ideas that I wish I could include all of them, but focusing on one specific kind of target audience message, I had to be able to filter through all of that and figure out what was most important to include to create a successful illustration. Yeah, so I got lots of practice doing that, which was really great. Uses for the work. So this work can live on in various formats. So as you saw in the behind the scenes slide, I did the paintings individually, separately, so those can all be taken out, used throughout the website, used in pamphlets, materials, signage, and then also presentations. So Point Blue is directly involved in the communications and the decision-making process of who is going to own this area of dunes in the future. So yeah, so they can spread the message, really try and advocate for low impact usage, use these materials to help inform people, inform the public, and use it in their presentations however they see fit. Yeah. Oh, and then stickers and bookmarks again. So lots of things. Yeah, and then art and science, why combine the two? They really go hand in hand, I think. And I think a lot of other people think too, that art helps to communicate information to diverse audiences and broaden the reach of information. So for example, like creating this illustration, I mean, there's so much information that could have been included. And then the job of the science illustrator is to kind of, identify the message, identify the audience, and decide what's going to go in there and how to best express that information and message in a concise way. And then broadening the reach, kind of getting it out into the world via products, websites, signs, pamphlets. And then art also translates ideas and information into visuals that engage audiences. So art in and of itself, I think, is very just engaging. It draws people in, it gets people's attention. I know whenever I go to a park, I look for the interpretive signage right away, and I'm automatically drawn to it, and I look at all the little pictures. So it's a great way to get people engaged. And then it also, I think, broadens the reach of who can kind of access this information. I think a lot of people learn in different ways. And I like that for visual learners or experiential learners through like field sketching or coloring and labeling. It's a way that we can get more people involved in learning these things. And thank you. very much for being here. I really appreciate it. It was a lot of work these past 2 months. It was so much fun. I learned so much. It's really cool to see it all come together. And I will take any questions or comments. However, I believe somehow we missed a slide. I had a thank you slide of everyone involved. So let's see. Maybe I just skipped it in the beginning. This one? Okay. I think I didn't. Okay, we'll end with the thank yous. I just wanted to make sure everyone got recognized because everyone really did a lot of work. Point Blue, obviously they are facilitating this really awesome apprenticeship, and they were the organization that hosted me, and I was able to do this with them. Also California State Parks. Esther works with California State Parks, and I followed Esther for a couple of days in the field, and learned a lot from Esther. Our generous donor, Maxwell Hanrahan Foundation, making this possible. Thank you very much. And then the PG Museum of Natural History, our lovely host. Lishka, of course, amazing supervisor. Lishka's super awesome, by the way. And the Plover team, Chris, super knowledgeable. I mean, everyone is. Stephanie, George, Esther, Alice. These are the Plover heroes that are out in the field, and they are checking the nests every day during breeding season. Well, maybe not every day, but most of the days. And they're, helping to restore the population. So big thank you to them, and then also everything I learned from them. Iri Swari did the Spanish translation over here. Super appreciative of that. And then Rick Kavitek contributed reference photos, as well as Stephanie and Esther. They also sent photos too. Yeah. So thank you again.
So moving to Q&A, our microphone is on that computer, so so Maria's gonna repeat the questions we asked from the audience, and then I'll be fielding some questions from our virtual room of participants. Yeah, let's start with
Okay.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
I have to leave, but I'm being rude, so I'm gonna ask my question before, so apologies for raising my hand in class. How did you become, I mean, I didn't know that there was snowy plover living in my area for 40 years, knowing whatever species of bird or the fall category bird, right? Is, and the sioux has a lot, the Elkhorn sioux, but I didn't hear that plover when I went on the Elkhorn sioux last week. I didn't hear about that, but you did a really nice job. Thank you. But how did you become interested in the particular, just the plover itself?
Yeah, so Rita in the audience is asking how I became interested in the plover itself as a bird, as a local species. And I guess I mean, I love animals. I'm very much an advocate for conservation of all the species, and with a special interest in birds. So yeah, I mean, when I first came to the Monterey area was for the CSUMB graduate scientific illustration program. And I heard about this bird from my peers, from people who grew up in the area, live in the area. Whenever we'd go to the beach together, they'd be like, oh, be careful, like where you're stepping, like there could be a plover nest. And I was like, well, what's a plover nest? And then they told me and showed me, and I was like, oh my God, that's so cute. And yeah, so.
Well, and one last question. Sorry, I have to leave.
No, you're good.
Postal Commission, do they get involved at all in projects that might be, because as people for transportation agency, that exactly like with MST, I think we heard about the soda project recently, they kind of run buses along the Highway 1. Does that impact in any way, or is this out of the range of that project? Maybe you don't know the answer.
Yeah, so Rita in the audience is asking, maybe someone from the plover team, Chris or George, might be able to answer this question better. But Rita's asking if the Coastal Commission team is involved, and more
So
specifically?
project if that impacts
If
dunes anyway.
if the surf project influences the dunes in any way.
I can answer just briefly, at least part one, that, and maybe some folks in the audience already know this, but the Coastal Commission is the whole framework for the sand mine being transferred to nonprofit or conservation ownership is being overseen by the Coastal Commission. It's all tiered off the Coastal Act. And then part B was something about the surf project. Is that correct?
Yeah.
I'm not sure I know what that is.
So the surf project, can you repeat what you were asking about the surf project?
I was just wondering if that is in the path of the dunes and the forest. I mean, I'm assuming it's not, but
And what exactly was it again?
it's a surf busway rapid transit project.
Right.
The bus turn around there at Sam City. They want to use the easement created by an old railroad line that runs through there to bus people from Sam City out to Marina. Rather than get stuck on the highway because it just blocks up.
Okay, so they're turning the old.
What they decided to do is, build this like 4-lane highway there, and it goes right through the dunes. And it looks like it's going to be quite wide and invasive. So there's been some back and forth, and the Carmel Pine Film really does a lot of following up on this, but I think the latest idea was to actually just use the lane where the railroad tracks were.
Okay.
As opposed to putting lanes adjacent to the railroad tracks and expanding the breadth. So we'll see how that goes, but, yeah, this railroad track just goes right through the dunes, and, it's eventually to have buses, healing through there all day.
I see.
I don't know.
Okay. So Chris, someone in the audience is specifying that the surf project is converting an old railway line from Sand City to Marina into 4-lane highway, you said, that goes, yeah, that goes through the dunes. I guess we were wondering if you know anything about that.
Yeah, so I just put in the chat. I am a little bit familiar with this project, but I am not familiar with what the exact impacts will be yet. So I think happy to follow up directly with anybody when we kind of know more about that project and what the impacts will be.
Great, thank you so much. So it's uncertain now, but can send you more info later. Thanks for coming.
We have a question, someone in the Zoom here, and then I'll come back to the room. We had a question from Evelyn. I can repeat this because they can hear me. Evelyn Benuelos, how did you get started with your science illustration career?
How did I get started? That's a great question. How I got started with my science illustration career. It was kind of a roundabout process of figuring it out for me. I have always been a nature child and also an art child growing up. I was always drawing, always outside. Those were my two things. And then when the people said I had to choose a career, I didn't think art, I could make that into a career. And I was like, well, I love animals and I want to protect them. So I originally went for wildlife conservation. And the school I went to, it was an all science, all agriculture school. I was like, oh, sure, they'll have like an art club or like a few art classes. I can like get that out that way. And there was nothing, which I didn't even know was possible. Learned that real quick. I did not stay there long. I realized art was really kind of an integral part of who I am. I need to be doing it. Otherwise, I'm not happy. So I left there and then I rerouted. I went to Arcadia University, which is in Pennsylvania. I mean, it was pretty lucky and by chance that there was an undergraduate science illustration program 30 minutes from my house, because there's really not many of them out there. And one of my professors had been like, hey, like, I think you'll be good at this. And they showed me a brochure pamphlet one day, and I was like, well, that seems right up my alley. So I went there, did that, fell in love with it, learned about what it was. And then I was like, okay, I want to do this. I love this. This is awesome. It combines all my interests. I'm able to have that creative output while also learning about the world along the way and contributing what I can in the form of art to conservation efforts and anything else that will help support the natural world and helping it thrive into the future. So yeah, then I landed on the CSUMB program in Monterey Bay, really kind of honed my skills there. And it's really like a deep dive program into science illustration. And then that's what I've been doing ever since.
People go back to the room.
Okay, Jamie.
I'm wondering why the predation increases in the dunes. I would think with cover, I would think with more vegetation in general, or structure, maybe usually there's more cover. But
Yeah, so I can also let one of the plover experts expand on this more, but from what I learned, oh yeah, sorry. The question was, why does predation increase on the nests when they're further back in the dunes? So from what I learned, my understanding is that there's more trees, places to perch on, and there's more predators back where all that foliage is. So there's just more there for them to prey on the nest. And things even like further out in the dunes, like people make the like teepees out of the washed up driftwood and things like that, or like stick them up in the sand. Even that can increase predation further out there because it gives predators a place to perch and look out and scope out the babies that are running around. And yeah, but if Chris or George want to expand on that, that'd be cool too.
I think one thing that's important to understand is that nests that are further from the high tide line are not more likely to fail, but they are more likely to fail to predators when they do fail. So there's a little bit of nuance there. So for snowy plovers to be safe from tide, they generally are moving up above the tide. But one of the key things for their ecology, as Maria's beautifully illustrated, is that they have proximity to that kelp rack. So there's this sort of push me, pull you going on between the desire to have a nest that's not flooded safely above the tide line, but still be in close proximity to the rack line for feeding. One of the reasons that Maria chose to use it's actually a picture of a common raven over the back dunes, is that that's a predator whose impacts have really expanded all across the Pacific coast in the last couple decades. And that is the predator that is primarily responsible for that nest loss in the higher dune areas. And so for plovers that are looking to essentially, if you think about sea level rise, and the plovers are essentially looking to be safe from these increasing storms and tides that are going on, it makes them vulnerable to this relatively new abundant predator, the raven, as they move away from the tide. And then as they move toward the tide to escape predation, they're more vulnerable to sea level rise. So there's sort of an optimum space in there that, again, I think Maria did a really good job of illustrating. Hopefully that helps.
Our audio decided to stop working after our test run.
Round face up if there's, no, I don't think that's gonna. We can repeat what Chris was saying. Basically, the plovers are trying to be close to their food source, which is the kelp rack. Right. They're trying to avoid the high tide line, and they're trying to avoid predation by ravens. That's their top predator right now. Right. So it's kind of multiple pressures, and the scientific diagram illustration. Scientific illustration. It's trying to show kind of multiple factors and
that there is a sweet spot, and that's where the protection efforts are being focused. And yeah, hopefully that answers enough. And like Chris was saying, there is some nuance in there, so it does get a little bit complicated.
Yeah. Yeah, Maria's answer about the height providing the predators seems to be the key factor that was challenging for me to understand.
Yeah. Exposure versus, yeah.
Thank you.
All right, another question from the chat, from Jenny Keller. She loved that you told people on the beach about what they knew and didn't know and cared about, and she's wondering if you can tell us more about what it was like approaching people, and then how that feedback. I mean, I think you shared how the feedback was the work, maybe reiterating that and how it was approaching people.
Yeah, so the question was how it was approaching people on the beach when I did my beach survey, and then how that influenced the work. Yeah, this was new to me, and I'm, more of like the quiet drawing type. So it was a little bit out of my comfort zone, but I got used to it really fast, and it was kind of fun. I got to give people stickers. They got really excited about that. And yeah, it was, I would say no one was really like everyone was pretty open to talking. And I kind of just approached people and would ask them, hey, here's what I'm doing. Is it okay, like, if I take a few minutes of your time? And most people were like, sure. Or a couple people were like, kind of asking why, like, what is this about? What are you doing? But then after I started talking, everyone was very, very engaged and happy to answer the questions that I had for them and happy to give feedback. Of course, there were variations of like interest levels. Some people were just kind of like straight to the point, like move along. Some people were like, oh, this is awesome, tell me more. So definitely a range of reactions and responses. Yeah, so it was really fun, I think. And then that helped inform the illustration in a few different ways. So on the illustration, I'll just go back to that slide so I can point at things. So the final illustration, so one of the questions that people had when I asked them, what would you like to learn more about? People seemed very interested in how they could safely approach the beaches, what they could do to support this low impact use of the beach, where to safely be on the beach. So that helped inform putting this little person over here walking on the beach, showing where it's safe to walk along which is in between the rack line and the tide line is the safest place to walk. So that way you're not disturbing the plovers, separating families, and not trampling nests. We have this little fence here, and that shows the fence line that is in the dunes in real life. A lot of people said that they either don't notice the fence line or they just assume it's there for protection. So kind of highlighting that the nests are here. That's why that fence line is there. Kind of reiterate it, putting that in. Something that I decided to not put in based on the feedback was kind of deep diving into the invertebrates that the plovers eat. I thought it would be cool to highlight, but people seemed less interested in that. And then kind of finalizing the content of the illustration, it seemed less important to the overall message. So I ended up taking that portion out. Yeah, I hope that answers the question.
That would be like a specific illustration on how cool bugs are.
Yeah, cool bug illustration coming soon.
So are there plans for installing your signage in that area? And so when is that likely to happen and how many people will use that sort of stuff?
Great question. Dan from the crowd is asking if there are plans to install the signage in this area. as of now, I think it would kind of depend on funding for that. So it might be something that could happen in the future. All the files are available to Point Blue. If that's something that, ends up being able to be brought to life, I think it would be cool. I think people would like that.
And I'll just add and you can repeat what I say. Soon, maybe.
Okay.
Just that the property that we were trying to focus on is kind of property that's going to be conserved and recreated within. It's not quite settled whose hands that property is in yet. So it's just whoever ends up owning that then might work with that in the future, but in terms of size.
Yeah, so for people on Zoom, Lishka was emphasizing the point that this area is still kind of up in the air as to who owns the space. So once that's finalized, Point Blue could then work with them to have this installed as signage. But that would be something once more decisions are made to decide more on. Decide to decide.
And the Zoom, and you're gonna probably have to repeat what she asked, but it's gonna come by over your computer.
Okay. Yes, Anne.
Yes, what a wonderful presentation, Maria. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Good job. And we talked a little bit about next steps in terms of possibly putting up signage if and when that's all settled. And I just wondered if I know you were there for a very limited amount of time, and do you see next steps that maybe you would recommend for Point Blue to take or that you would want to take? So that's part one of my question. And part two is, what are next steps for you? What's in your future?
Yeah, so Anne on Zoom is asking next steps that I have for the future, and then I apologize, I wasn't quite clear on the first question.
Oh, next steps that you would recommend for Point Blue to take on this project. Any follow-up that you see would be helpful, either that you could do or that Point Blue might think about for our future.
Yeah, and then Anne is also asking next steps for continuing this project, moving forward with Point Blue. I think, yeah, Alicia and I were discussing maybe working with the Plover Guardian team and having some immersive field sketching where people can go out and learn directly in the field from some knowledgeable Plover folks, and then I could guide some field sketching along the way, have an immersive activity there. And then for myself in the future, so after this, I will be starting teaching at the CSUMB, the science illustration program that I graduated from a couple of years ago. So that's where I am going right after this. And yeah, but I hope to continue to collaborate with Point Blue in the future. I'd be super excited to keep this project alive, keep it going. And yeah.
Well, just a comment, I think, these are such engaging displays. I think during the breeding season, if there's a way to, attach them to the fencing or put a stand in front of the fencing along the way, because occasionally as you enter from a parking lot, there's a informative blurb, but there's nothing on the beach. And I think if there's something that explains why the fencing's there and how cute these guys are, just the whole thing, something for people along the way as they're entering and exiting the beach at breeding season. I think that would improve the dissemination to the public of why we're doing this, and why you can't have dogs, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, so for people on Zoom, there was a comment about having the signage up during breeding season along the roped off fence line, or like at entryways, to the dunes. They mentioned that there is not a lot of signage or it's not super visible. So yeah, I definitely agree with that. And when I was out talking to people too, it sounds like they agree as well. A lot of people just, they wanted to learn more. They didn't understand. They didn't know what a plover was. And a lot of people expressed that they were interested in having some sort of information there that they could see what's going on, and learn about and understand. So, meeting, yes. Read question?
Yeah, you shared a lot about how much research went into like planning went into making sure we could do effective graphics. Have you thought about like in the future stages of the project, how to gauge how effective they have been?
That is a great question. So from the audience, there's a question, how to in the future gauge the effectiveness of the project. It's not really something we discussed, but I think that's a really great point and really great question. I think it would be really cool to do another survey down the line, and see, how far this information can get out there, how far we can push it out there, and talk to people some more. You're a communications expert, you might have some good ideas.
Yeah, I'm not an interpreter expert. I was waiting for the next question. These things are tough and they take a lot of work to determine if it is effective. I think, upfront planning with stakeholder groups and like more of what Maria did could be helpful, and then continued engagement. One thing that we did include on this graphic is a QR code so we can track visits to that webpage. So that's one way that we could track the metrics, but I think that's a really good point, and something that's worth doing once you put something out into the world, to stay engaged with it and see how it's meeting the goal that you want to.
Yes.
I thought maybe you could approach the Monterey Bay Aquarium. They have a nature center display that talks about Elkhorn Slough, and just putting something like this up in the nature center would be, because as you leave the nature center, you're going into the aviary, where there are the shore birds. And so putting something like this, and you can approach the aquarium, they could probably incorporate this into their play as well.
Yeah, so for the internet audience, another comment from the crowd about reaching out to the Monterey Aquarium and incorporating the signage with there somehow. I think that would be a really cool idea.
Two more questions in the chat, and then we'll do two out here, and then I think we'll wrap and move on. Okay, so from Zach, who's also on communications at Point Blue, he's wondering if you were surprised at how much engagement you ended up having with the public and other stakeholders in preparing an illustration, or did you know going into all of this that that would be part of the research gathering phase?
Yeah, that's a great question. The question was I aware of how much involvement and engagement with the public and research planning was involved with the team and staff at Point Blue prior to doing this project, or if that was kind of new to me. Yeah, I guess I didn't realize how much involvement there would be in the project. I mean, I knew there would be some coordination with the plover team and my direct supervisor. I didn't anticipate going out and doing a survey with the public, and then also like having a broader reach at Point Blue, like broader inputs from the staff there. So yeah, it was really cool experience and great to hear everyone's inputs. So yeah.
The pattern will go through two in the room, so this is, I think, yeah, we've got a simple answer to this one right now, but, Jenny Keller wants to know where can we purchase more stickers? She wants to share them far and wide.
Thanks, Jenny. So Jenny's asking where can we get more stickers? Well, we might, this is still pending, but we might have a print on demand service of the stickers on Point Blue website. So stay tuned for that. Jenny, I can definitely get you a sticker and bring it back to you, and a bookmark. Yeah. Oh yeah, we're gonna put a pile. We'll leave some here at the museum, right? Yeah, so we'll leave some here at the PG Museum. So tell all your friends to come to the museum, and then also at the Marina Library. So also go get a book and a bookmark, and a sticker there. Okay.
I have a comment and a question. My comment is I'm really glad to see the other species up there, especially Swiss blue butterfly. It's great to see that. And my comment, and my question is, was this translated to Spanish too, this particular local?
Yeah. So the comment was someone was very excited to have the Smith's blue butterfly here on the page featured. And then if there's a Spanish translation, yes. So the Spanish version we have in person here, printed. It's not this one, it's this one over here. And Ari, staff at Point Blue, did the translation of that. So yeah.
Yeah, on the link web page, you can click and download a high quality PNG file of the English.
There's also on the web page, you can download English and Spanish version of this illustration.
I just wanted, as we're wrapping up, to also want to say the exact same thing, which is that I so appreciate that you and Point Blue just really took the time to not only talk about this very needed and charismatic animal that's very, very cute that people might not know a lot about, but the second you see a picture, you're like, yes. And use that to also to assist them, but also to assist these other, people don't like bugs and they don't like things that look like snakes. And here they are in this beautiful graphic, and I just love that it's there. And I think it's so wonderful that you're also including them in a conservation message, because they're often so just people are underwhelmed by them, and so they underfund them. And so thank you for including those too.
Yeah. For the internet people, someone was just expressing their excitement for the other species included in the illustration, and then bringing light to the plovers, our friendly neighborhood, adorable birds.
One more last, yeah, sorry, not like, quick comment and question. One is regarding the signage and this ideas. I just wanted to point out that the UCSC Natural Reserve does seasonal protection and surveys of the Ohlone tiger beetle. And they put up little rope lines, string lines really over certain areas. And they just print a bunch of, some kind of cheap printer of signs and laminate them, and they have them very frequently. And I think that's very effective. And I would just suggest that however this comes around in the future, your idea about, it strikes me that that's a really useful, more important than an expensive, big single permanent sign somewhere, are as frequent as you can, inexpensive, temporary signs along those rope lines. I think that should get emphasis if you can. I think it would be really helpful, because people don't bother when they come in, they might just be on the beach, and if there's a bunch of them all along the rope, then they see them, they connect it. So that's a thought. And the question is, I recognize that one of your very first professional jobs freelancing was for none other than Scientific American. So I'm wondering, as you proceed in your career now, Maria, are you going to be like ultra exclusive and only go for the big?
No, I'll work with anyone. Yeah. Oh, for the internet people, someone was saying had a really good idea. Jamie had a really good idea to print multiple instead of maybe having a big sign, like one big one at an entranceway. You could print multiple, just maybe on like a cheap printer, and laminate them and just hang them. He thinks that the frequency of having that information there will make it more available to the public, and they'll be more likely to stop and look at it. I think that's a really great idea. And then he was also asking if I'm only gonna work with exclusive organizations, such as Point Blue. And to that I said, I will work with anyone who is working to protect the natural world.
You on Zoom and then we'll
Yeah.
digital part.
Yeah, thanks everybody who attended virtually. Thanks so much for coming. Thank you for your questions and comments. And thank you everyone here again so very much.